So I'm also a student of psychology, and in this talk, I intend to share. Sorry, there's a lot of children crying. In this talk, I intend to share like a super short glimpse of a discipline, a field of psychology called positive psychology, which is quite a new field and it's super exciting. So what do these things have in common, like helping others, being a good problem solver and a quick thinker, and being able to adhere to your New Year's resolution? They're all related to positive emotions. And there is a branch of psychology which is all about positive emotions. When we say the word psychology, if you just approach the topic of psychology, you will there's no doubt that you will think of Sigmund Freud, and you will think of couches, you will think of ego, libido, and stuff like that. But psychology is like a super, super broad topic. Here I've plotted a few areas of psychology. These are the big ones. And I've tried to plot where positive psychology fits into the picture. And I think the important thing about, if you want to explain an entire area of psychology, you need to share the major theories in that area, and you want to share the famous people, so to say. So that's usually how psychology is taught. So this is really like a super short glimpse of the most impactful theories of positive psychology. So positive psychology is kind of in an argument with the rest of psychology, saying that, okay, you guys, you deal with the bad, you deal with the trauma, you deal with the clinical, you deal with the bad stuff. Whereas positive psychologists, we deal with the good stuff. Concepts like wisdom, hope, optimism, self-efficacy, courage, mindfulness, altruism, forgiveness, resilience, and toughness, to name a few. And I mean, is this a mouthful? I mean, imagine you've got an area of research dealing with all these concepts, and how would you actually do it? I'm sorry, by the way, I'm distracted. There's like kids knocking on the door, and they know they're not supposed to. So how would you do it? And research is complicated, but the way you go about this is basically you try to define these concepts. It's called having an operational definition of them. And so coming up with these definitions is obviously not very simple, but you do that, and then you kind of try to correlate these concepts to certain traits or to success in cognitive tests. So a typical setup in positive psychology research will look like, we define courage as X, Y, Z, and if you are courageous, you will succeed in academia, you will be a good sports person, you will be able to do this and that. And it's so cool that you can actually do this. And this is positive psychology research. So let's do this as an example. Wisdom is a concept. It's a super old concept. And a loose definition of wisdom would be being able to deal with different contexts, being context aware, of being able to deal with uncertainty. So that would be like a loose definition of wisdom. And given all of that, what would you do with if you possess all these traits? How would that be? How would that manifest in your life? Well, it turns out, and this is actual research, that you will be more interested in personal growth. You will be a more self-reflecting person. You will try to understand bigger contexts. You will be less inclined to like drink alcohol or do drugs or do gambling or something. You will be less inclined to do that. And you will be a more balanced person, where your kind of ego and your I are kind of coming together into one. So you will be a more grounded person. And this is not just like text. These are things you can do research about. You can also do research on hope, for example. And how would you define hope? Well, you can say that hope is a way of thinking in paths. You can say that I'm at point A, and I want to get to point B, and I'm really struggling, and what can I do? And to be hopeful is actually, or to have hope is actually to be able to visualize a path from where you stand to a desired outcome. Uh, Another aspect of hope is seeing yourself as an active agent who has control of his or her situation and who kind of can encourage him or herself. So these are like two dimensions of hope, and if those are cultivated, if you exhibit those, you will probably do well in academia, you will be doing well in sports, you will be a healthy person, and you will have an easier time adjusting to both like therapy and different aspects of life in general. And this is like typical positive psychological research where they break down all of these things. A concept you may hear sometimes if you read literature on this topic is something called psychological capital. It's called PsyCap. And I'm not going to go into the details of it, but it's pretty much a sum of hope, optimism, efficacy, and resilience. So these four are kind of aggregated into property called psychological capital. And it's measurable. It's measurable at least in the laboratory, and you can actually reason about it. Now this is something like about positive psychology in general, but now I'm going to walk us through the like major names and theories in that field. So one major theory is learned optimism. Many of us have heard about learned helplessness. If you do a behavior over and over again, it's not really reinforced. You're going to be eventually you're going to be kind of apathetic. This is the optimism. This is the opposite of learned helplessness, and it's actually proposed by one of the three major names in positive psychology. And learned optimism, it's an attributional style which is composed of three different styles of attribution. So if something bad happens to you, Seligman has theoretized that if you have cultivated a learned optimism, you're probably gonna attribute bad stuff happening to you to external factors, like somebody's been having a bad days, or you were in the wrong place. You're gonna attribute things to a particular occasion. If you have an accident, it's not you being prone to accidents. It's just you have encountered an occasion with an accident. If you score badly on a test or something, you're going to attribute that to that particular field. Again, not to you yourself as a person. And this is kind of a big theory because it means that, like, think about depressed people where everything is gloomy and dark. This is the opposite, where you kind of deconstruct this general notion of stuff going bad and deconstruct it into different ways of attributing them to different things, and you by doing this you can deconstruct the bad feelings. That's kind of a big thing here. Another big thing is launched by another big name is Albert Bandura. And Bandura is known for his experiments on Bobo dolls and child aggression, but this is again the opposite of that. And self-efficacy is a super powerful concept. It's your belief that you are able to deal with a situation. You are in control, whatever comes up in that particular context, and that's really important about self-efficacy. It's context dependent. But whatever happens in that particular context, you're able to deal with it. And imagine to be able to grow something like this. Imagine to be able to grow an attitude like this. The good thing about this is that it's a learned thinking pattern. You can actually learn this. You can, if you experience success in a field, you're going to be adding to your feeling of being able to deal with this issue again. You can learn this from other people. you can visualize yourself succeeding, or you can even kind of look to experts who will tell you how to do it. But that's the big thing. You can learn this, and this is another central aspect, a central theory of positive psychology. A third one is the broaden and build theory of positive emotions. And if you Google this name, you're going to see a TED talk with a very charming lady who basically tells you, I'm simplifying this like a lot, but if you induce a positive emotion in people, they will pretty much open up, and literally opening up by, she's apparently done research saying that even the peripheral vision will widen if you induce positive emotions. And the way this research is being done is basically you can show positive clips to people, you can give them candy, and then subject them to different cognitive tests, and they will score better. And that's also like a super big thing. So if you want to know about positive psychology, you will have heard about this theory. I think the theory of flow doesn't really need more introduction. That one is particularly known. So Csikszentmihalyi is the third person who is like a central figure in positive psychology. He has theorized about a state where your resources are on exact par with the certain challenges. So you find something quite challenging, but your capabilities, your resources at that time are in perfect balance. And if you end up in this situation, you will pretty much lose track of time, you will lose track of ego, you will find this activity intrinsically rewarding, and that's the theory of flow. With all these good things happening, all this research being conducted, why hasn't this taken over the world is a reasonable question, because I've told you about plenty of good stuff. And that has to do with research. I mean, the way research is being done is you've got the scale of research. Research can be descriptive, correlational, and lastly, you can perform experiments. So much of the positive psychological research is about correlating or even experimenting, but with different positive emotions and kind of outcomes in cognitive tests. And it takes a little while to kind of move that from a laboratory to the outside world. And the boring term or the scientific term for this is external validity. So you've got the different kinds of research, and you've got the notion of external validity. Also, another problem, which is kind of in a way specific to positive psychology, is that of construct equivalence. It's the fact that if you are considered a wise person in the US, for example, or Europe, that would be a cognitive trait, whereas in Asia, wisdom would be more an affective trait. So we've got cross-cultural issues, and we've got issues related to moving things out from the laboratory to the world. Still, positive psychology is being applied. Coaching, for example, is not really, as far as I know, borrowing that much from the theories of positive psychology, maybe from a method called appreciative inquiry, but it's really done in the spirit of positive psychology. What I've kind of been surprised at is that if you take a course in organizational psychology these days, it's a perfectly viable task and this is like a homework that you get. Like, this is this dysfunctional organization. How would you create flow in that organization? How would you optimize it for flow? Or how would you develop self-efficacy in that person? And this is not like mumbo jumbo you do to be theoretical about yourself. This is just, it's something you actually can have this as an assignment at the university. You probably have heard of this authentic leadership thing. One way of classifying leadership comes from positive psychology also. Last but not least, last slide, but most important one maybe. Positive psychology also concerns itself with developing and identifying talent. And that's so cool. And what is talent? Talent is a natural recurring pattern of thought, feeling, and behavior that can be productively applied. By the way, speaking of defining things, right? Having an operational definition for talent, how cool is that? And my kind of ending remark here is that if you're into tests, if you're into psychological tests, there are tests for your strengths that are valid and reliable. It means that they are as good as they get, given all the ifs and buts of psychological tests. But those, and I'm going to point you to two tests here, with the caveat saying that they are as valid as reliable as psychological tests get. No mumbo jumbo, no nothing. I'm not really selling anything. I'm not affiliated with these organizations, but I think it's kind of cool to do these tests. They are done in the spirit of positive psychology. One is for free. The other one costs like a few dollars, not that many. But this is the closest that we have today, I would say, to having a formal verification, like or a formal way of telling you or yourself which talents and strengths that you should pursue. So I will leave you with the links to pursuing your talents.
Thank you, Alexander.